What if the man everyone feared most was hiding a secret no one expected? In the heart of the wild frontier, a young woman's fate collides with that of a legendary warrior, and nothing is as it seems. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The sun blazed mercilessly over the Texas prairie as Elizabeth Morgan clutched her tattered dress, her knuckles white with fear. 3 days had passed since Comanche raiders attacked her family's homestead, killing her parents and taking her captive. The 20-year-old daughter of settlers now found herself being led through unfamiliar territory toward an uncertain fate. "Keep moving, white woman," the warrior named Running Fox ordered, pulling roughly on the rope tied around her wrists. His dark eyes betrayed no emotion, but the other warriors whispered among themselves in their native tongue. As they approached the Comanche camp nestled between rolling hills, Elizabeth saw women pausing their work to stare, children pointing curiously, and warriors gathering to inspect the new captive. Her blonde hair, now matted with dust and sweat, had become an object of fascination. Chief Gray Wolf emerged from his lodge, his weathered face marked with the lines of many battles. The warriors presented Elizabeth like a prize. "This one is strong," said Running Fox. She did not cry or beg during the journey. The chief circled Elizabeth, evaluating her worth. "She will make a good wife for Black Thunder. He returns tomorrow from the war party against the Texans." Elizabeth understood enough to feel her blood run cold. Black Thunder, even settlers knew that name. The most feared Comanche warrior, whose raids struck terror into frontier settlements. Stories of his brutality circulated among frightened homesteaders on dark nights. "No, please," she pleaded, finding her voice. "I'll work, I'll serve, but don't." A sharp command from the chief silenced her. The decision had been made. That night, Elizabeth was kept in the lodge of an elderly woman called Singing Bird, who offered her a bowl of stew and a blanket. The old woman's eyes held something resembling sympathy as she used gestures to communicate. "Black Thunder, husband," Singing Bird said in broken English, pointing to Elizabeth and then outward. Elizabeth shook her head vigorously. "I won't marry him, I'd rather die." Singing Bird sighed, her ancient face creasing with worry. "Black Thunder different. Not what white people say." Elizabeth turned away, tears streaming down her face. What did it matter if he was different? She was being forced to marry her people's enemy, a man whose hands were surely stained with the blood of settlers like her parents. Dawn broke with the sound of whoops and hollers. Elizabeth was roughly awakened as women entered the lodge, bearing clothing and ornaments. Despite her resistance, they dressed her in a deerskin dress, adorned with colorful beadwork, braided her hair, and painted symbolic designs on her face. "The war party returns," one of the women explained in halting English. "Black Thunder comes." Elizabeth was led outside as riders approached the camp. Warriors painted for battle, some bearing wounds, others carrying trophies. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the party halted before the chief's lodge. One warrior rode slightly ahead of the others. Tall and powerfully built, his face bore the marks of many battles, and a single eagle feather adorned his long black hair. His eyes, sharp as obsidian, immediately found Elizabeth among the crowd. Black Thunder dismounted with fluid grace, speaking briefly with the chief before approaching her. Elizabeth raised her chin defiantly, determined not to show fear despite the trembling in her legs. "You are the one they have chosen for me," he stated in perfect English, surprising her. His voice was deep and measured, lacking the cruelty she had expected. "I didn't choose this," she replied bitterly. A flicker of something, perhaps understanding, crossed his stoic features. "Neither did I," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "But this is our path now." Before Elizabeth could respond, the chief began the ceremony that would bind her to Black Thunder. As alien words washed over her, Elizabeth felt as though she were drowning, her old life slipping away with each syllable. When the ceremony concluded, Black Thunder led her to his lodge on the outskirts of the camp. Inside, Elizabeth was surprised by the orderliness, weapons arranged carefully, furs neatly placed, a small fire burning in the center. "You fear me," he stated, watching her hover near the entrance. "Shouldn't I? You're Black Thunder, the scourge of the frontier." His expression remained unchanged. Names become legends, and legends become monsters in the telling. "I am a warrior who protects his people, as your soldiers protect yours. Your people killed my family," Elizabeth said, her voice breaking. Black Thunder was silent for a long moment. "And your people have killed many of mine. This is the way of war." He gestured to a separate sleeping area. "You will rest there. No harm will come to you in this lodge." Elizabeth stared at him, confused by this unexpected courtesy. "Why did you agree to take me as a wife if you don't want me? The chief believes that binding you to our strongest warrior will prevent you from escaping. And I—" He paused, something unreadable passing across his face. "I have my reasons to accept." Days turned into weeks as Elizabeth adjusted to life in the Comanche camp. To her surprise, Black Thunder maintained his distance, treating her with a quiet respect that confused her. He slept separately, spoke little, and demanded nothing of her beyond helping with ordinary tasks. The other women in the camp watched her with suspicion, especially Willow Leaf, who Elizabeth soon learned had expected to become Black Thunder's wife herself. Only Singing Bird offered friendship, teaching Elizabeth the Comanche language and explaining their customs. "Why does he not treat me as a wife?" Elizabeth asked Singing Bird one afternoon as they worked together preparing hides. The old woman's weathered hands paused. "Black Thunder carries many sorrows. His first wife, Morning Flower, was killed by white settlers 5 winters ago. Since then, his heart has been closed. And why take another wife at all? The chief commands, and Black Thunder obeys. But watching you ... Singing Bird's eyes twinkled. "I think you remind him of what it is to feel." Elizabeth scoffed. "He barely speaks to me. He watches you when you aren't looking." The ice begins to crack. That evening, Elizabeth returned to the lodge to find Black Thunder cleaning his weapons. She observed him silently, noting the precision of his movements, the concentration in his dark eyes. "You were a teacher," he said suddenly, not looking up. Elizabeth started. "How did you know?" "The way you speak. The books you tried to save when we raided your homestead." Now he met her gaze. "I found them in your satchel." Heat rose to Elizabeth's cheeks. "You went through my belongings?" "I was curious about the woman forced to be my wife." He set down his knife. "You taught children?" "Yes, at the settlement school." The memory brought unexpected tears. "I loved watching them learn, seeing their faces light up with understanding." Black Thunder nodded slowly. "My people value learning too, though in different ways. The young ones could benefit from your knowledge." Elizabeth stared at him, astonished by the suggestion. "You would let me teach Comanche children?" "If you wish it," he returned to his work. "It would give you purpose beyond being a reluctant wife." The next day, with Singing Bird's help, Elizabeth gathered several curious children under the shade of a cottonwood tree. Using sticks to draw in the dirt, she began teaching them English words, while they giggled and taught her Comanche words in return. Over the following days, Elizabeth's impromptu school grew. She found unexpected joy in these lessons, and the children's acceptance began to soften the hardened edges of her grief. Sometimes she noticed Black Thunder watching from a distance, his expression unreadable. One evening, a sudden summer storm forced everyone to seek shelter. Inside their lodge, the close quarters made their usual silence more awkward. Thunder crashed overhead as rain drummed against the hide walls. "Are you afraid of storms?" Black Thunder asked, noticing her flinch at a particularly loud thunderclap. "No," Elizabeth replied. "They remind me of my father. He used to tell stories during storms to distract me from the noise." Black Thunder added wood to the fire. "Tell me one of these stories." Surprised by his interest, Elizabeth hesitated before sharing a tale her father had told about sailors and sea monsters. As she spoke, she noticed Black Thunder's usual stoic expression softening. "Your father was a good storyteller," he said when she finished. "How would you know?" A rare, brief smile touched his lips. "Because his daughter is." The storm raged through the night. When Elizabeth woke in darkness, she found Black Thunder thrashing in his sleep, murmuring words she couldn't understand. Without thinking, she moved to his side, gently touching his shoulder. He woke instantly, grabbing her wrist, eyes wild until recognition dawned. "You were having a nightmare," she explained, heart racing at his grip. He released her immediately. "I'm sorry. Do you have them often?" Black Thunder stared into the dying embers of their fire. "When the memories are too strong." "Of what?" "Of finding my wife and infant son dead in our lodge after a soldier raid." His voice remained steady, but Elizabeth saw the tension in his jaw. "I was hunting. I should have been there to protect them." Elizabeth's throat tightened. "I'm sorry. Your people call us savages," he continued. "But it was your soldiers who killed a woman and child who posed no threat." Unable to defend such actions, Elizabeth remained silent. For the first time, she saw Black Thunder not as the fearsome warrior of frontier tales, but as a man who had suffered losses as devastating as her own. The next morning, Willow Leaf confronted Elizabeth at the stream where women gathered to collect water. "You think you have tamed the great Black Thunder?" She sneered in broken English. "He takes you only because the chief commanded. His heart remains with Morning Flower." "I don't want his heart," Elizabeth retorted, though the words felt hollow. Willow Leaf's eyes narrowed. "Good, because when he tires of his white captive, he will see that a Comanche woman is better suited to stand beside our greatest warrior." Elizabeth returned to the lodge unsettled by the encounter. Black Thunder was preparing to leave with a hunting party, strapping a quiver of arrows to his back. "Will you be gone long?" she asked, surprised by her own concern. "A few days. The buffalo have been spotted to the north." He paused, studying her face. "Is something troubling you?" Elizabeth hesitated. "The other women, they don't accept me. They fear what is different." He secured his knife at his belt. "As your people fear us. It's more than that. Willow Leaf wanted to be where you are," he finished. "But that was never my wish, even before you came." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement that despite the circumstances that had brought them together, a fragile understanding was growing. After he departed with the hunting party, Elizabeth continued her lessons with the children, finding that focusing on them helped ease her conflicted feelings. One afternoon, as the lessons concluded, Singing Bird approached with a troubled expression. "Riders come," the old woman said urgently. "White soldiers." Elizabeth's heart raced as she followed Singing Bird to the edge of the camp where warriors were gathering. In the distance, a small contingent of blue-uniformed cavalry approached under a flag of truce. "They come to talk, not fight," Singing Bird explained. "But many hearts are angry." With Black Thunder and many warriors away hunting, the camp felt vulnerable. The remaining warriors formed a protective line as the soldiers halted at a respectful distance. A captain and interpreter dismounted and came forward to meet with the elders. Elizabeth hung back, conflicting emotions swirling within her. These men represented her people, possibly even rescue, yet the thought brought less relief than it would have weeks ago. The captain's voice carried across the open space. "We've come to negotiate the release of any white captives in your possession. We know you took a woman from the Morgan homestead." Elizabeth felt eyes turning toward her. For a moment, she considered rushing forward, claiming the salvation being offered. But something held her back, uncertainty about returning to a world that now felt distant, and concern for what might happen to the camp after she left. Before she could decide, Running Fox stepped forward. "We have no white captives, only the wife of Black Thunder." The interpreter translated, and the captain's eyes narrowed as he scanned the gathered Comanche, eventually spotting Elizabeth with her distinctive blonde hair. "That woman is Elizabeth Morgan, kidnapped during a raid," the captain called out. "Her uncle has been searching for her. We demand her return." More harsh words were exchanged, tensions rising with each translation. Elizabeth stood frozen, torn between worlds. Her uncle, her father's brother, had a homestead 2 days' ride east. He would take her in, give her back her old life. Yet that life now seemed like it belonged to someone else. The woman who taught at the settlement school was gone, transformed by her time among the Comanche. The elders argued among themselves. Without Black Thunder present, some favored releasing her to avoid conflict, while others insisted she was now one of them through marriage. The captain's patience was wearing thin. "We'll make camp nearby and return tomorrow for your answer. But know this, we won't leave without her." As the soldiers withdrew, the camp erupted in debate. Elizabeth sought out Singing Bird, who was sitting outside her lodge, her face troubled. "What will happen to me?" Elizabeth asked. The old woman sighed. "The council debates. Some say giving you to the soldiers will prevent a battle. Others say it dishonors Black Thunder. And what do you say?" Singing Bird's wise eyes met hers. "I say your heart must decide where it belongs." That night, Elizabeth couldn't sleep, her mind torn between the safety of her old world and the uncertain path she'd begun to forge in this new one. In the lodge's quiet darkness, she realized that somewhere along the way, her fear of Black Thunder had transformed into something more complex: respect, understanding, and perhaps the beginnings of deeper feelings. At dawn, a commotion woke her. The hunting party had returned early, alerted by scouts about the soldiers' presence. Elizabeth emerged from the lodge to see Black Thunder dismounting, his face set in grim lines as warriors reported the situation. His eyes found her immediately, a question in their depths. Did she want to leave? Would she choose her people over the life they had begun to build? Before they could speak, the elders called Black Thunder to council. For hours the men deliberated while Elizabeth waited anxiously, helping the women prepare the buffalo meat brought by the hunters. When Black Thunder finally emerged from the council lodge, his expression was unreadable. He approached Elizabeth where she worked. "The soldiers return soon," he said quietly. "The council has decided to let you choose your path." Elizabeth's hands stilled. "They would allow me to stay? If that is your wish." His voice remained neutral, giving no indication of his own preference. "But there may be consequences. The Bluecoats speak of peace while preparing for war. What do you want me to do?" she asked, searching his face. Black Thunder looked away. "You never chose to come here. I would not force you to stay." "That isn't what I asked." His eyes returned to hers, and for once, the warrior's mask slipped. "I have watched you with our children, learning our ways, enduring hardship without complaint. You have shown the strength of a Comanche woman." He paused. "I would not wish to lose that." It was as close to a declaration as his pride would allow, but Elizabeth understood what remained unsaid. In his own way, Black Thunder had come to care for her, just as she had for him. Before she could respond, a shout went up. The soldiers were approaching again, this time with more men. The captain rode at their head, his face set with determination. The camp mobilized, warriors taking defensive positions while women gathered children. Black Thunder led Elizabeth to the center of the camp where the elders waited to meet the soldiers. The captain dismounted, his hand resting meaningfully on his pistol. "We've come for Miss Morgan," he announced without preamble. "Her uncle awaits her return." The elder spoke, with Running Fox translating. "The woman may speak for herself." All eyes turned to Elizabeth. The captain stepped forward, offering his hand. "Miss Morgan, it's time to come home. These savages kidnapped you, but you're safe now." Elizabeth flinched at his words, seeing the anger they provoked among the Comanche. She looked at the outstretched hand, then at Black Thunder, whose face had returned to its impassive mask. "These people are not savages," she said clearly. "And I was not kidnapped." The captain's expression darkened. "They've confused you, Miss Morgan. Stockholm Syndrome, they call it. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I ever have," Elizabeth replied, moving to stand beside Black Thunder. "I choose to stay with my husband." A murmur ran through both groups: surprise from the soldiers, approval from the Comanche. Black Thunder's hand brushed against hers, a brief touch that communicated more than words could. The captain's face reddened. "This is absurd. No white woman would willingly stay with a Comanche. You're coming with us, by force if necessary." He reached for Elizabeth's arm, but Black Thunder stepped between them, his voice deadly quiet. She has made her choice. Honor it, or there will be blood." For a tense moment, it seemed violence was inevitable. Then a new voice called out from behind the soldiers. "Let me speak with her." An older man on horseback moved forward. Her uncle, Robert Morgan. Time had grayed his beard, but his eyes were kind and familiar. "Elizabeth," he said gently, "is this truly what you want?" Looking into her uncle's concerned face, Elizabeth felt tears threatening. "It is, Uncle Robert. I found a place here, a purpose." "With him?" He nodded toward Black Thunder. Elizabeth glanced at the warrior beside her, the man who had shown her respect when he could have shown cruelty, who had given her freedom when he could have demanded submission. "Yes," she said simply, "with him." Her uncle studied her face, then slowly nodded. "Captain, you heard my niece. She stays of her own free will." "This is irregular," the captain protested. "Army protocol." "Damn your protocol," Robert interrupted. "We came to rescue a captive, not to take a willing wife from her husband." He turned back to Elizabeth. "The door is always open if you change your mind." As the soldiers reluctantly withdrew, Elizabeth felt Black Thunder's hand find hers, their fingers intertwining for the first time. The simple gesture spoke volumes about the barriers that had fallen between them. That night, as they sat beside the fire in their lodge, the usual silence between them felt different, charged with unspoken emotions and the weight of her choice. "Why did you stay?" Black Thunder finally asked. "Your uncle would have given you back your old life." Elizabeth considered her answer carefully. "Because that life is gone. The woman who lived it died with her parents." She met his gaze across the flames. "And because here with you, I found something I never expected." "What is that?" "A chance to build something new. To be a bridge between two worlds instead of a casualty of their conflict." Black Thunder moved to sit beside her, his shoulder touching hers. "It will not be an easy path. There will always be those who cannot accept what lies between us." "Like Willow Leaf?" Elizabeth asked with a small smile. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "She will find another to set her sights on." They sat in comfortable silence, the barriers that had kept them apart slowly dissolving in the warmth of their shared fire. When Black Thunder's hand found hers again, Elizabeth knew that despite all they had endured, or perhaps because of it, they had found an unexpected harmony in the chaos of two colliding worlds. Winter descended on the plains, transforming the landscape into a stark canvas of white. The Comanche camp had moved to more sheltered grounds near a river valley, with lodges clustered closely for warmth and protection against the biting wind. 3 months had passed since Elizabeth chose to stay, and with each day, her place among the tribe grew more secure. Her lessons with the children continued inside a large communal lodge during the coldest days, and her command of the Comanche language improved steadily under Singing Bird's patient guidance. More significantly, the relationship between Elizabeth and Black Thunder had deepened. The careful distance he once maintained had given way to genuine affection, subtle by white standards, but unmistakable to those who knew him. They now truly shared a life, their initial arrangement evolving into a partnership built on mutual respect and growing love. One crisp morning, Elizabeth was teaching the children when Willow Leaf entered the lodge, her face solemn. The woman who had once been her most vocal critic now approached with measured steps. "Black Thunder calls for you," she said in Comanche. "A rider comes." Elizabeth thanked her, surprised by the civil tone. Since her decision to stay, even Willow Leaf had grudgingly accepted her presence, especially after Elizabeth had helped care for her young nephew during a fever that swept through the camp. Outside, Elizabeth found Black Thunder with the elders, gathered around a lone rider wrapped in buffalo robes. As she approached, the figure turned, revealing her Uncle Robert's weathered face. "Uncle!" she exclaimed, hurrying forward. Robert dismounted stiffly, embracing her with obvious relief. "Thank the Lord you're well. When the snows came early, I feared for you." Black Thunder stepped forward, offering a formal greeting that Robert returned with careful respect. The two men had formed a cautious understanding during Robert's occasional visits over the months, neither fully trusting. but both committed to maintaining peace for Elizabeth's sake. "I bring news," Robert said gravely, addressing both Elizabeth and Black Thunder. "And a warning." Inside Black Thunder's lodge, warmed by a crackling fire, Robert shared what had brought him through dangerous winter conditions. "The new military commander at Fort Richardson is pushing for action against the Comanche," he explained. "Colonel Harkins doesn't share his predecessor's tolerance for peaceful coexistence. He's been gathering forces, planning a spring campaign to force all tribes onto reservations." Black Thunder's expression remained impassive, but Elizabeth saw the tension in his shoulders. "How certain is this?" "Very. I've seen the supply wagons, heard the officers talking. They're bringing in more cannon, enough ammunition for a long campaign." Robert looked at his niece sadly. "Elizabeth, I've come to offer you both sanctuary. My homestead is remote enough to avoid scrutiny. You could winter there until this passes." The offer hung in the air, its implications clear. Robert was proposing not just temporary shelter, but a neutral ground, a compromise between the worlds they each inhabited. Black Thunder rose, pacing the confines of the lodge. "I cannot abandon my people when war threatens." "You wouldn't be abandoning them," Elizabeth said carefully. "You'd be securing an alliance, creating a place of safety if it's needed." His dark eyes met hers, a silent communication passing between them. In the months they'd shared a life, they'd learned to read each other's thoughts with increasing accuracy. "I must speak with the council," he finally said. "This decision affects more than just us." While Black Thunder conferred with the elders, Elizabeth showed her uncle how her life had changed, the respect she'd earned as a teacher, the skills she'd learned from the women, the place she'd carved for herself between two cultures. "You truly love him, don't you?" Robert asked as they walked through the camp. Elizabeth smiled. "Not in the way I once imagined loving a husband. It's something stronger, forged in fire rather than born in comfort." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He sees me as I am, not as someone to be protected or possessed. And I see him not the savage of frontier stories, but a man of honor and wisdom." Robert nodded thoughtfully. "Your mother would be proud of your courage. Your father." He chuckled softly. "He'd be bewildered but coming around eventually." The council deliberations lasted until nightfall. When Black Thunder finally returned to their lodge, where Elizabeth waited with her uncle, his expression was resolute. "The council has decided," he announced. "I will accompany a small group to your homestead, those most vulnerable who cannot fight if war comes. The others will prepare to defend our hunting grounds or move farther south if necessary." Robert nodded. "How many?" 20, perhaps 30. Mostly elders, some women with young children. Black Thunder's gaze shifted to Elizabeth. "Including my wife, if she is willing." Elizabeth felt a surge of emotions relief that a compromise had been reached. Concern for those who would remain and quiet joy at Black Thunder's protective instinct toward her. "I'll go where you go," she said simply. "But we must ensure that both our peoples understand this isn't surrender, but alliance." The following days were a flurry of preparation. Those chosen to travel to Robert's homestead gathered supplies and said difficult goodbyes to family members who would remain with the main camp. Elizabeth worked alongside Singing Bird, who would be among those making the journey, preparing medicines and preserved foods for the winter ahead. On the eve of their departure, as Elizabeth packed their few personal belongings, Black Thunder entered their lodge carrying something wrapped in soft hide. "This is for you," he said, presenting the bundle to her. Elizabeth unwrapped it to find a beautifully crafted knife with an antler handle, small enough to fit her hand but strong enough for serious use. "It was my mother's," he explained. "A woman's knife for protection and daily work." Deeply moved by the significance of the gift, Elizabeth held it carefully. "Are you certain? This should stay in your family." "You are my family now," he replied, his voice low and intense. "Whatever comes in the moons ahead, whether we live among your people or mine, we face it together." Elizabeth stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "Together," she agreed, resting her hand against his chest. The steady beat of his heart beneath her palm felt like a promise, one more powerful than any wedding vow. The journey to Robert's homestead took 5 difficult days through snow-covered terrain. They traveled in a small caravan, with Black Thunder and 2 other warriors constantly scouting ahead and behind for danger. Elizabeth rode alongside Singing Bird's travois, helping the elderly woman endure the rigors of winter travel. When they finally crested the hill overlooking her uncle's valley, Elizabeth felt a strange confluence of emotions: nostalgia for the world she'd left behind, pride in the strength she'd developed among the Comanche, and hope for what might be possible in this place where 2 worlds could meet. Robert had prepared well. The main house had been expanded with additional cabins built nearby, creating a small settlement with room for all. Most importantly, he'd ensured privacy and distance from neighbors who might report their unusual arrangement to authorities. As they settled in for the winter, an unexpected harmony emerged. The Comanche adapted to the wooden structures while maintaining their own customs. Elizabeth and Black Thunder occupied a cabin at the edge of the settlement, a symbolic position that represented their role as bridge between cultures. In the evenings, around a communal fire, stories were exchanged, Comanche legends alongside frontier tales, creating a shared narrative that acknowledged both histories. Black Thunder, to Elizabeth's surprise, revealed a gift for storytelling that captivated even the most skeptical of her uncle's ranch hands. One night, as they lay in their cabin listening to the wind howl outside, Black Thunder spoke of the future. "When spring comes, we must decide where our path leads." Elizabeth nestled closer to his warmth. "Does it matter where, as long as we walk it together?" "It matters for our children," he replied. "I would have them know both worlds, not be forced to choose as you were." The mention of children, a possibility they had discussed, but not yet been blessed with, made Elizabeth smile. "Then we'll build something new, somewhere between. Not fully Comanche, not fully white, but something stronger for having both." Black Thunder's arm tightened around her. "A difficult path. All worthy paths are," she countered. "You taught me that." As winter slowly released its grip on the land, word came from both directions, messages from the Comanche bands moving south, and news from frontier towns about the military's preparations. The threat of conflict remained real, but something else was spreading alongside it: stories of a white woman who had chosen to live among the Comanche, and of a warrior who had formed an alliance with settlers. Their story, initially met with disbelief and scorn, began to spark curiosity. Occasional visitors braved the journey to Robert's homestead, some Comanche warriors checking on their families, others white settlers cautiously seeking understanding rather than conflict. On the first truly warm day of spring, Elizabeth stood on the hillside above the settlement, watching Black Thunder teach her uncle's grandchildren and the Comanche children together, showing them how to identify animal tracks in the mud. The sight crystallized everything she had come to believe: that understanding could grow where fear once ruled, if only given the chance to take root. She thought of the long journey that had brought her here, from captive to teacher, from reluctant bride to loving wife, from a woman torn between worlds to one who helped build bridges between them. The path ahead